Ever had to remind yourself, children are precious. They are a gift. Some said through clenched teeth, I'm thankful for my bundles of joy. And people say to me, but your kids are good. Yes, but the work that has gone in. I remember I used to repeat that phrase a lot in the bathroom. Children are a gift. Moms, you'll know. As soon as you go into the bathroom, immediately a child will appear and need something. Maybe even two children, because personal space, what is that even? I have a distinct memory of being in my small ensuite bathroom with the teenager, and the needier, harder work second born came in with a mom, and I think I muttered something unrepeatable because the teenager gave her some sort of code and she disappeared quickly. Well, hovered at the door, if that's what you can call it. And I had to say to myself through gritted teeth, children are a gift. It is a privilege. I want to beg something of you before I talk to you about parenting. A disclaimer, obviously, I'm not an expert and I'm not operating on any studied theories. Where I'm coming from is this. I've been teaching young children for 26 years. I know, looks like it. And parenting for 19. And because the 17-year-old is so different from the 19-year-old, it feels like it's 19 years. So I'm just talking what I see daily in my life as a grade 2 teacher and what I do that worked as a parent then and now. And I just hope that what I say will resonate with you as good sense. So would you agree parenting and the school should be aligned, right? We can't have parents doing and allowing one thing while the school expects something completely different. This would be confusing for the child. For example, this one would keep talking while her teacher was talking, even to the point of talking to the teacher while the teacher was addressing the class. When the teacher mentioned this to the parents, they said that they allow their children to interrupt their conversation anytime they want, in case they need to tell them something important. Have you ever been talking to someone and their child is calling them mommy, 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 and tugging on their sleeve, while the mother either ignores them, which is not helpful, or ignores you to respond to, look at this skill needed to have been addressed at home before they come to school. Otherwise, even if you believe in self-expression and think that your child says the cleverest little things at home, in class they will appear rude when they do it there, or to their boss one day. Quick tip, we taught our children, when you want to talk to me, put your hand on my arm, do not pat. Keep your hand there. I will put my hand on yours. I'm still listening to Auntie Bridget, but I'm telling you that I will listen as soon as I'm finished. And let them wait. Get them used to waiting. I was talking to a teacher in the passage the other morning before school, and a grade 1 child came running up excitedly and jumped in the middle of us and said, teacher, teacher, while the child's parent was standing behind him waiting for him to tell his adorable story. That's embarrassing for us to say in front of the parent, my lovey, you mustn't interrupt. You, the parent, should be pulling them back saying, wait, my love, the teacher is talking. She'll be with you now. Here's another true story. Last term, one of our grade 2 teachers said she heard a commotion from the parking lot. It was a young child who had been calling from the car to her mother, who was chatting to a friend when fetching from school. She had grown tired of waiting, and so she hooted and yelled out of the window, Mommy, will you frickin' hurry up? And the mom went scampering off, apologizing to the child, not for the noise. So here is the question. Who is in charge in your home? Because at school, the child is not in charge. And if they are used to being in charge, then school is going to be very hard for them. A pupil was battling with some maths and the mom was quite desperate for help. So I suggested some extra activities to do for homework. And the mom said, oh, I don't know if I can get her to do that. She doesn't like doing maths. So there are two messages in that comment. The child is in charge at age 8. And if something is hard for you, avoid it instead of working on it. These are not messages that we endorse. Now, I'm not saying that children will ever jump to do extra homework, but have an open discussion. I've chatted with your teacher and she agrees that a little bit of extra maths twice a week will help you. So we're going to do that and we're not going to argue about it. If you comply, I'll put a smiley face in your homework book. Teaming up with the teacher works a treat in foundation phase. Or if we can do this without a fight, we can have a milkshake treat on a Friday. Not disproportionate, like I'll pay you 100 Rand for doing extra work. Just acknowledge with your kid, it sucks to have to do extra, but it's for your good. So a small treat if it's painless as possible. My friends have friends who have a 3-year-old who is completely in charge of her parents. My friends don't even want to have them over anymore because the child doesn't go to bed, stays up in adult company, dominates the conversation, dictates what the parents must do. Come play horsey, daddy. Then daddy leaves the dinner table to go and play horsey. Fortunately, in my friend group, we were all exactly on the same page. We took our babies, toddlers, small children to browse at each other's houses from birth, put them all down in various rooms and camp cots at certain times, then carried them all to the cars sleeping at the end of the evening. What a mission, but possible. It's either that or don't socialize because it's too difficult to put your child to sleep while out, or always pay for a babysitter, or be the people whose kid is charging around at 10 p.m. and sitting around on adult conversation. Being on the same page as parents is absolutely critical. If one of you is strict and the other one is the gentle parent, please just discuss some core issues that you must agree on, even if one of you has to compromise on something and the other one on another issue. Because without a united front, kids will trample all over your discipline. They smell a rift and they pounce. At least decide together on daily possible situations which cause conflict, like we as a family will eat at the table. We don't run around while we eat. And if the mom says, come and sit at supper time, then dad should say, your mom has called you, move. So we were pretty strict parents, but here is the secret. Strict early establishes a dynamic of obedience that requires fewer fights later on. I won't go into the whole baby training thing, but barring illness or colic, either you or your baby is in charge of making your schedule, and your baby doesn't know what is best for its own self. Obviously, you have to make more allowances as children get older, and wait for how super fun it really is. I'm not even being sarcastic, to hang out with teenagers. These same friends' now 18-year-old daughter was amazed at our last bride how delicious the combinations were on our snack platter because we had never allowed the kids to pick at the adults' food. Here's your packet of chips. Don't come sticking your fingers into the adult camembert cheese. She was like, have you been having this the whole time while we were having knickknacks in plastic bowls? There is a place for smaller children, and they are not our little besties. My 19-year-old now calls me her bestie, and that is a privilege that I don't take for granted because I'm not in charge of all her decisions anymore. Small children, small problems, though, constantly needing attention and activity to sort them out, wiping bottoms, snacks, helping dress them. It's exhausting. But you control everything, their play dates, their whereabouts. Big kids, big problems. More time freedom for you. Most of the time, you will even miss their company, nose in their phone and shut in their room. But you are not in control to an extent of who they choose to see, what they do, and where they go. And the potential consequences of their messing up can be life-changing. As a working parent, the closest I ever came to burnout was during the young children era. It is difficult, especially for moms. Out at the end of the tunnel as your kids get older and older. Kids need to see mom also contributing to the household and for following her career and passion. But when you're with them, be present. I was not great at that. Back to what I see as a teacher. Schools are often accused of not changing with the times, and by now some have made attempts to modernize their structures or include modern technology. But at the end of the day, children still need to do these things. They need to be able to move from place to place in an orderly manner, not disrupting every other class as they pass. They need to be able to sit for an age-appropriate amount of time to focus on a task. And P.S., sitting in front of a screen for an hour is not focus. It's the mundane things, like homework, that require focus. They still need to be able to show grit and perseverance until the task is completed to the specification. They can't just give up because it's difficult or rush it to get it done. They need to be able to speak and listen at appropriate times. Do they have an inside voice? Do they know it's rude to listen to a video very loudly next to somebody else in a restaurant? Do you? They need to be able to fellow learners with a certain amount of respect. Now, these all sound like old fashioned expectations to me. Possibly longer ago, there was less of an understanding that children need brain breaks or time to move. But I think that even in incorporating this into modern teaching, there has not been an abandonment of old fashioned values in favor of new techniques. I am speaking for myself about the type of school that I teach at, which is a fairly traditional, large, very high functioning environment. So, if we're dealing as modernly as possible with old fashioned values, and we should be aligned so that your child has the best chance of success at school and in life, are you helping? Back to my original question, do you want to follow the guidance given from the school, but you think, I can't, my child doesn't respond to those methods. Children are different these days. I believe that children haven't changed. They are born with the same inclinations children were born with 40 years ago. But the world that they are born into has changed, and parents have changed. No children are born saying please and thank you. But long ago, parents expected it, and nowadays they don't. How does your child ask for something? I want popcorn, or please may I have a bag of popcorn? Do you withhold the item until you get that please and thank you and until it becomes natural? I parented 2 primary school age children within the last 5 and more years, and I parent pretty similarly to how I teach, otherwise, that would be counterproductive. And I believe that it is possible to do what the school suggests. From early on in my parenting, I tried to implement some advice that my grade 5 teacher gave me as a child on how children should behave. She said that she was walking on a farm with her grandfather, and he suddenly, but very quietly and clearly, said to her, "Stop." She was an obedient child, so she stopped, which would have been under her foot upon her neck. Now imagine that you were walking with your child in the Hemingway's parking lot and you said the same thing. Would your child show immediate obedience? Or would they say, why? Or just now? Or no? Or would they even ignore you or not hear you? I told my girls from young that they needed to learn to obey immediately because of this story, or in the urban context, if a car was about to reverse in a parking lot. There is also what I call the theory of stop it. When you have done the gentle coaxing, the rationalizing, the patient understanding, there comes a time when enough is enough. And you should be able to have the power in your voice to say, stop it now. Like a South African, stop it. With a certain tone, which means the time for pushing boundaries is done. Children will push you to see how safe and steady you are. The more they can push you, or the more you change your decisions based on their nagging, the less secure they feel, because they know they shouldn't actually be the ones who are in control. They want you to be the line in the sand, even when they kick against it. A child fairly recently was having some separation anxiety from her mom in grade 3 after some friendship. This way. Okay, back on. Thank you so much. Thank you, Tara. The child in grade 3 was having some separation anxiety after some friendship issues. And sit with her after the bell had rung to try to. After giving it some time and days of this, lots of cheating and bribing, the issue had been resolved. I called her aside and said, enough now. Your mom has a job to do, and she's spending the day getting there late and worrying about you all day. when you are actually fine. Stop it now. I only told the mom that I had just had a little chat with the girl. Days later, she said to me, I don't know what you said to her, but since that chat, she's been good to go. I still haven't told her. All I did was give her the science, the theory of stop it. Most days, when the child is crying and clinging to you, the little ones, when you drop them off at school, hand them over, leave. They are 9 times out of 10, 100% fine for the day. But they like to push your buttons, not because they're naughty, but because they are testing you. They want to know, can you handle me? Can you handle this? Are you a sure thing? Magic question. How do you get children to obey immediately? It is simple. Expect it. The bottom line is that children know whether you mean it or not. And if you have to say, I mean it, then you don't. I never had to hide TV remotes from my toddlers. They knew that every time they touched them, their fingers were flicked. Every time. Not only when I had the energy, because if you fight the good fight hard enough in the beginning, you won't need to fight it forever. Friends of ours used to hide the TV remote so their kids couldn't watch the TV while they were out and left with a nanny. Why wasn't the strength of their rule enough? If I say to my girls, if I said to them when they were smaller, switch the TV off and nobody moved, I didn't just shrug my shoulders and go, they never listen. Because this is how all children will react. Not because they're bad, but because they're children and they need to be taught how to listen before they come to school. So in my house, nothing further happened until that instruction was fulfilled. And how did they know that I did mean it? Because of the magic word, consequences. I remember Pat Hill touched on this last week in her talk. Follow through by the parent. This is the golden hard work of parenting. I've heard of parents who removed the TV game by putting it up out of the child's reach and then just shrugged later when the child climbed on a chair to retrieve it. Of course, there can't be consequences for every time the child doesn't jump immediately. But after a warning or a prompt or a failure to comply, you have to issue something that will happen and then make it happen. Like what? Examples. I want the TV off by 5 o'clock. If I come in here and it is still on, you will be banned from TV for a day. Give them a 5-minute warning. 5 minutes. You will have to go to bed half an hour earlier. You will have to sit and shred the cardboard boxes for the rubbish. You will have timeout in the bathroom, not in the luxury palace of your bedroom. Normally, it would be removal of a privilege, or in Dr. Phil's words, everybody has a currency. It may even be currency. I used to keep a board of who owed how much money to whom in my kitchen. And if I had said, cut your nails to my girls, and I had to say it twice, I charged them, -5 rand to mom. If they had been bickering too much, I made them hold hands on the way to school. They hated that. If they snuck an extra chocolate from the snack cupboard, they had to watch as their sibling got one and they didn't. Something not big, not physically punishing, but something that hurts their comfort or their wants enough to remember it. If the rule is don't bounce the ball in the house, there should never have to be a reminder or a discussion about that after establishing it as a house rule. Bounce, ball is gone for the rest of the day. Next time, longer, a week. Please stop warning and not acting, or only acting on the third misdemeanor, because you are teaching your child not to listen. Don't go into that watery ditch. Oh, okay, well then, can you just not wet your pants? Let's roll them up. Don't play with my keys. Oh, okay, but don't take them out the lounge. When I hear this, I want to say, rather don't give the instruction if you are going to allow them to do it anyway, because you are teaching them that your words don't really matter. Think hard before you say to one of your kids, don't do this thing. Do you really mean it? Or help them to prepare. Kids, when we get to the beach, you're going to stay with me until we get to the river. At the river, you can only go in at the place near the bench where I can see you. If anybody splashes or throws sand, that person is coming out immediately. On the way back to the car, we will go on the swing. You will each get a turn, starting with the oldest. When your turn is over, no moaning. If you argue with me, we won't do the swing next time we come. Do you all understand? Possibly even repeat the order. And then the magic ingredient: do exactly as you've said. You are in charge. Bribery is even fine, as long as you are not rewarding poor behavior. If everybody followed these rules, we will get an ice cream on the way home. Anybody who doesn't, no ice cream. Feel free to even get ice cream only for the one who complied. Not ice cream if you don't throw sand at your brother again. The deal was no throwing sand at all. One of the reasons that people don't follow through is that they are too distracted. It is like a generation of attention deficit parents, busy on their phones, on their laptops, taking work calls, working from home when the children don't get the full attention when the parents are home. So they learn how to slip through the gaps in their parents' attention. It's a problem of this generation. And I'm not saying that your kids should have your attention 24/7, but what is happening is you issue the instruction, but you don't act when it is not followed because you were too busy. Then there's a big reaction when the house is on fire 10 steps down the line, when you could have intervened at step one. Being more aware and mindful of what is happening while you are parenting can improve this. I think the other two reasons that people don't choose to do the hard thing in parenting, for example, if you need to take the iPad away, is that either they are afraid of upsetting the child, or they think, shame, my child is so precious. Surely they should have whatever they want in order to be happy. And unfortunately, what this leads to is children who are entitled. When you don't require your child to make eye contact and greet adults, they look rude, even if shame it is because they are shy. When you do not require children to say please and thank you, they appear ungrateful and spoiled. I heard a conversation like this recently. The mom said, "What do you want on your sandwich, my boy?" "Ham." The mom said, "What about some cheese?" "Nah, but I want some chips." "Okay, here they are." On the surface, it was an exchange of information. But what I heard was the mother is at the beck and call of this child, and he may demand anything without expressing any gratitude. When you do not require your children to have table manners or at least chew with their mouths closed, they look unmannered and not well brought up. They don't know to do that from birth. As a teacher, having a classroom full of children who want to talk to you all the time and it's snack break, I see a lot of food. Nobody wants to see food going around and around in someone else's mouth, and children don't figure this out on their own. When you do not require children to clean up after themselves, they look spoiled and unskilled. We had little grade 2 girl look helplessly at the brush and dustpan when she spilled her sharpenings because she couldn't figure out how it worked. When the teenagers, mine included, on the Craddock tennis tour had to mop the courts after some rain, one of the moms who was on tour commented that you could see who had never mopped a floor before, and I felt quite guilty. When you pack your children's bags and carry them into school for them, they appear irresponsible and babied. When you do not require children to have any chores at home or things that they do not like to do, unpack the dishwasher, pick up the doggy do. Then they do not develop grit or perseverance, or they appear lazy or spoiled. The entitled children that I see are not horrible kids. They're sweet, but they can't do hard things, so they are debilitated. And they start to appear disrespectful because they don't listen to adults when it doesn't suit them. So, from a teacher's perspective, here are some tips for finding the magical middle ground between being too much and too little. First, parents must give just the right amount of hands on and just the right amount of hands off. We see so many extremes between too much involvement, where the parents want to protect their kids from any consequence or struggle and do all their work and projects for them, and too little involvement, bordering on neglect. Obviously, everybody here and listening has found this middle ground, but if you could just pass these tips on to your friends. Number 2, some things you should act on, but some things you should make like frozen and let it go. For example, the term bullying is bandied about very quickly by parents and children, when in reality, children push and tussle a little bit every day and must learn to deal with the odd scuffle. Bullying is continued, intentional, hurtful behavior, whether physical or emotional, directed all the time towards your child on more than one occasion. and it continues after intervention, then yes, please do act. It's also not necessary to go straight to the principal. The route is through the teacher first. Thirdly, support, but don't baby. If they leave their kit at home, which they will do, bring it and let them know that it was inconvenient. If it happens again, make sure they have a consequence. If it becomes a habit, stop saving them, have some consequences, but also help them. Set up a system at home which helps them to become more organized, not by you packing their bags for them, but monitoring, supervising, set up a tick list, a visual schedule. Be there, but not to the point where you interfere from the side of the field in the coach's decisions. Case in point, our first experience of being sport parents back in under 9, where firstborn was dropped from the A netball team to the B netball team. How did she cope? She was disappointed, but we had prepared her. After the under 9A's horrifying defeat, we had a little talk with her and said, won't be very surprised if the coach gives your place to a girl who's a little bit more hungry to play, and a chat about how to get in the game a bit more. If we had dissolved and said, my love, that is humiliating, how dreadful, don't worry, I'm going to email that coach, then she would have been way more upset. Sometimes we need to just tone down the drama. If you are upset because you cannot go and watch the drama at Stedford because you have to be at work, then they will be upset. They take their cue from you. But please also don't be the absent parent who is never on the sidelines and then makes the teacher wait half an hour without an apology or a thank you. So, quick summary. Needing to speak to teachers every morning? No. But being a ghost who we can't access and none of the phone numbers that we have for your work? Also no. Carrying their bags? No. Coming into the passage to wait for them before home time? No. But leaving them outside in the wind until 4 when they finished at 2? Also no. Middle ground. Find it. Know that your child is fallible. Even honest, fabulous, magical children with bells on their toes can tell lies. Sometimes they misunderstand. They have times when they didn't listen or they were wrong. Know what is going on at school and socially. Do you actively organize play dates with classmates? Do you know some of the classmates' parents? Some children battle to make friends, and they often do it outside of school hours when you have made an effort to get those children together. Do you read and keep and diarize notices, or is your first port of call the class WhatsApp group? Are you that parent? Please don't leave all the homework to the aftercare. Touch base. Your attention at home could make all the difference. Habitual absenteeism and lateness in the morning is not minor. Children rack up, say, 18 days of absenteeism over a year. This equates to almost 4 full weeks of school. How could this not affect future progress? Many parents treat missing a day of school very lightly, and children who arrive late frequently start their day rushing, stressed, missing out on announcements. If you want security for your child, then this is robbing and sabotaging them. You may think the teachers are so petty, but the message that you're giving is that you and your child are more special than anybody else who has to be there on time. Conformity to rules in a big place is an important lesson. Your child is precious, but he or she is not more precious than the other children in the class. Teach your child the lost art of problem solving. Rather be safe than sorry. If you are not sure if they must wear the tracksuit on Friday, don't message the teacher at night. Send the tracksuit in a kit bag. If they need it, they can change before school. That's why you mustn't be late. Or if they didn't need it, no harm done. As parents, we are allowed to query or raise issues, but for happiness and harmony's sake, be very aware of the way that you say things. Too often, people in general react in anger, fire off an angry email or a phone message or a threat full of unpleasant tone. Teachers do make mistakes, but usually, whatever situation has upset a parent can be explained, or they didn't have the full picture or the correct information. I was taught never to write anything down that I could not stand by when it was shown back to me at a later date. Maybe say, I might have the wrong end of the stick, but this is what my child says happened. Could you help me to understand what went on? This will foster a happy working relationship with the teachers because primary school is a long road and we keep records, especially if you have put something in print. When an intervention is recommended, whether it is remedial, vision screening, occupational therapy, speech therapy, pediatric assessment, counseling, please give it your attention. I had a professional person say to me that his child's teacher from another school had recommended some or other assessment and he didn't like that teacher. So he was going to wait until next year. And if he holds that new teacher in any esteem, then they might act on the recommendation. So for a year, that child's happiness, which is wrapped up in his self esteem based on his perceived abilities and probable lack of progress, will be compromised. No, you're not going to like all the teachers. Some of us might give you a cramp. Some teachers give me a cramp. You're not going to probably like all we have to say. Sure, get a second opinion, but at least have the thing checked out, even if you disagree, because then you can rule it out. This is not about proving a teacher wrong, this is about your child. Teachers don't judge when children are needing help, but we have strong feelings when a child needs help and nothing is done about the recommendation. And please, if finances are a problem, say so. Teachers understand lack of finances. Otherwise, it looks like disinterest. Some issues get raised year after year. I promise you, teachers don't make suggestions for fun. Do you know how much extra work it is to have a child assessed? Forms, letters to doctors, feedback, monitoring of procedures. Worse is the teacher who cannot be bothered. And we foundation phase teachers must be especially annoying because these are the catchment years and we deal with this stuff a lot. So school will educate, but it is still the parent's responsibility to teach morals, acceptable behavior, manners, and even general knowledge. Does your child own books or just video games? Do you talk at supper time or do you all just watch TV? Do you speak about why there was a religious holiday or a public holiday or our country's history? And last teacher tip, a practical one. For the love of all things holy, will you please label your child's clothing and lunchboxes? Show me a teacher holding up the umpteenth item asking, whose is this, with no response, and I will show you someone wanting to stab a parent with a black permanent Koki. When we view the parenting that happens at school, it's like conducting an orchestra or tuning a radio to find the right station. Sometimes we just want to dial down the crazy a little bit here, and we want to turn up the parenting volume a little bit there until we find that sweet middle ground. Okay. Now, a slightly different tangent, possibly applicable more to parents of older kids, but this is affecting children younger and younger, and this message is crucial. With all the great debate around screen time and the dangers of social media, you should be in charge of checking up on your children's screen activities. And mostly, you are not. How do I know? Because when my teenager first got a phone, which was checked by me a few times a week, which is very time consuming, I could tell from the disgusting messages that young girls were putting as their status updates on WhatsApp that their parents had no idea what they were exposing themselves onto on their phones. I could see what time some kids went to bed based on the last message on a grade 8 class chat. Why was the phone in the child's bedroom at night? How did I know how to handle this new phone generation that I didn't grow up being a part of? But I didn't. So I read this book by Emma Sadlier and required my child to read it before she received her phone. She signed an agreement that I wrote on a piece of paper that this phone was not her private personal property and that I may remove the phone as a consequence whenever it is needed or check it. Did she comply all the time? Nope. One night when I kissed her goodnight, I said, "Where is your phone?" Because she was meant to leave it at a place where we would bring it up at night and not be in her bedroom at night. And she guiltily withdrew it from her pillowcase because the other children were allowed to chat later than her bedtime. Sorry, when you're older, you will have more freedom. Even good children who have been raised with good intentions will let you down, and that's fine. They are meant to try these things in a safe space. She needed to be tempted, do the wrong thing, learn about the loss of trust and how that will affect her freedom and our relationship, and learn to choose trust. Then we relax the boundaries a little more and more. But some of you have handed over complete free access to a world of danger and harm by not navigating these waters with them. No child has enough willpower to put their phone aside for studying or for homework time. Obviously, as they got older, I stopped checking the phones or just did the occasional check. After 16, they were mostly on their own. Secondborn scored because we're so tired from doing the right thing for firstborn, or is that just me? Phone checks always led to interesting questions and conversations, which were not always comfortable, but necessary. They might say, "You can't check my phone." Why? Did they buy it? Do they pay for Wi Fi or data? It's not a right. When they first get their phone, it is your phone that you are letting them use until they prove themselves trustworthy in the dark waters of social media. If your foundation phase child has a phone, what are you doing? They do not need it. They have enough screen time on other devices. And if somebody sends them a pornographic image, they will never unsee it. Please don't get the message that I'm anti screen. I know that we as a society all spend too much time on screens, but I also know the deep satisfaction of plonking kids in front of, in my day, Barney the dinosaur, and knowing that nobody will mom me until I make them switch it off. But some of you are entering phone world too early. You need to do major management when your child gets a phone. A teacher friend at a nearby school told me about a revolting voice message that a grade 5 boy sent to a grade 5 girl, which the parents of the girl are demanding the school do something about, even though it was sent at 9 o'clock at night. This is a parenting issue. But schools are needing to address this complete lack of management. The boy obviously thought no one would check his actions. How differently would children behave if they knew that adults were looking? And now you see also, if it's not phones that your children are trying to get onto at home, it will be an iPad or a tablet or a game or the television. It's not the thing that is the problem, because each thing has its own merits. It's managing the thing. When I think back to when I was in high school, my dad and I would fight every day about the landline. That was the thing back then. Spending hours talking to friends and racking up the phone bill. Are any of you old enough to remember how you got past the lock on a landline by tapping out the number on that little pedal? There will always be a thing. And sure, we seem to have more things in this day and age. But I don't also believe that swimming upstream and banning all the things is helpful. The things are not going to go away. So manage the thing. Use it for good, help children navigate and learn about the bad so that when they do encounter the things, because you can't shield them forever, they will know how to behave. And lastly, advice for parenting teens. And this is where I laugh like a loon and ask if anybody has any ideas, please, for me. Teenagers are only manageable if you got that obedience thing right back when they were little. Otherwise, good luck. It is definitely about allowing more freedom and stepping back, even when the consequence is going to blow up in their face. On Friday, my second born realized as we were pulling out the driveway to get into Merrifield traffic, 4 o'clock traffic, that she needed a hard copy of her public speaking speech as we were about to leave. And what it took for me to not rush in there and just do it for her because I knew she didn't even know the password on her dad's computer to print it. And also to stay calm and not explode, which would have just made the situation a whole lot worse. Of course, we'll have the discussion later about how irresponsible that was. So, freedom, yes, but also keeping your own non negotiables. You don't need to buy into but everybody. Your line in the sand. Example, no phone in the room at night. Phone removal for a teen as a punishment can sometimes be counterproductive, but you can limit its use. Money is brilliant for consequences. They need this for entertainment and independence. My girls know in summertime, if you get sunburnt, you will pay me 50 Rand. Talks with teenagers are best done side by side, not necessarily face to face. For example, in the car. We know also whoever fetches first gets the scoop of the day. And then later, when the other parent says, how was your, no, they're too tired to repeat it all. Ask mom, I already told her when she fetched me. So you want to be the one that is driving the kids around, if possible. Or make them talk by force. We often have at supper time, tell me 3 things I don't already know before you can leave the supper table. Or a good thing, a funny thing, an interesting thing. It's always a bit of a fight to get it out, but sometimes it's the only way you know something. Or you might have a firstborn that talks the hind leg of a donkey, and you might have a secondborn that you need to blood from a stone. No phones during supper or some phone-free time. Make your house the place that they want to come. Buy the snacks, even if it's expensive. Get the pizzas. Get something that makes your place, your home, the place that they want to hang out at. When I was in high school, we had a snooker table. And when the boys used to come and hang around, that's what they did. And when my girls were 12 and starting to get to that age, I said to Sheldon, when boys come here, they're either going to put their hands on my girls or we need to give them something to put their hands on. So we bought a table tennis table. Very good investment. Boyfriends, girlfriends, when that time comes, rules laid out, even to the boy. No boys upstairs. Luckily, we have an upstairs. No lying on the couch under a blanket. Not home alone. Even if we're both busy and Nana has to come and work in the garden, or they must go to a shopping center until one of us can be home. Communicate with the fellow in-laws and guard your whole heart, because they will break up and you will be gutted. Keep giving them jobs and chores to have a meaningful contribution in the home for a sense of belonging. They are not just a princess. And I end with this. Parenting teens is not for the faint of heart. My new favorite quote is, parenting teenagers is like trying to stand up in a hammock without spilling your wine. I have more time, but I have more worries. I'm less sure of what to do or what to advise. Find like-minded people to be your fellow villagers as we navigate our tribes together. If you have young kids, befriend people with older kids to help you prepare for what's coming or how they handled it. We are not alone. Thank you for listening. I hand over to Lindy Shaw. She won't be as long as me.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm definitely not going to be as long as Mel, but we had to try and find a bit of a different take on this, and because Mel has so much experience in teaching, and that's the perspective that she's come from, and because I'm employed at the church as the children's pastor, Mel looked at me when we first discussed this and said, "What about doing something on biblical parenting?" And my heart stopped because I thought, "Oh my gosh, who has the right to do something on that?" Because I don't know. I fail all the time. But so full disclosure, I don't feel worthy of doing this. But much like no one on earth is perfect, so it rings true that there is no perfect parent. There's no perfect parenting style. No one has this thing waxed. My kids will tell you that too, if they were here. But I'm going to try to give some pointers on biblical parenting without trying to over-spiritualize anything. I've done some research in this topic leading up to this, but I didn't study it. It's take it from my heart. So, all things come from God. Our children are no exception. When I think that God chose Rhett and I to be the parents to Adam, Sophie, and Jesse, I don't quite have the words to explain what a true blessing that is. They are His children, and we've been given this hugely important task to protect and raise them for His glory. I'll never forget the first time we left the house with 3 small kids. So they were, at the time, it would have been 4, 2, and then a newborn. And we left, and I was holding the hand of one child, and Brett had the other child, and then there was the newborn. And we just completely felt overwhelmed. I'll never forget that feeling. And kind of parenting kind of continually feels like that a bit. What does biblical parenting, though, even mean? As a Christian, we should be attempting to parent biblically every day of our lives. It should be something that just naturally happens. But how often does life feel so busy and cluttered that we find ourselves in survival mode? And the first thing that usually disappears when we're in these situations is the thing that we've least practiced. So my question would be, are we intentionally practicing biblical parenting every day so that it becomes ingrained in who we are as people and parents, in order that when the trying times arrive, as they do, we are able to stand firm on God's principles? So, biblical parenting does not mean perfection. It's a continued journey of working hard at something, being able to ask for forgiveness when we mess up, and praying for wisdom for the future. How would you honestly answer the following questions? When last did you pray together as a family? Do you regularly go to church, or is it something you fit in when you can? Do your kids see you and your husband going to Bible study? Do your kids know what quiet times with God or having devotions really means? Do your kids know what it means to tithe? There are a couple of points which I'll be sharing, as well as some practical examples of how we can try to intentionally include these in our homes. So the first one, for me, would be lead by example. Model a godly life by showing love, patience, and respect, as children often learn more from what they see and not from what they hear. Recently, someone said to me, it's in this day and age that we live in, where everything is on our phone, often kids don't see us reading an actual Bible anymore, and how powerful it is to see us as parents open the Bible and see that mom or dad is busy having their quiet time. But because everything's on our phone, we seem to, even if we are doing a scripture reading or something, they don't know that. So even if we are intentional about sharing that, or maybe sharing it at the supper table about what you heard today or read, or going to church. As we all know, that really changed after COVID largely, and I feel like we're still kind of getting out of this phase a bit in our society. Do you go to church just when you feel like it, or because it's a priority in your family's existence? Life is super busy. I get it. Sometimes I think the people at my own church wonder if I actually am even married, because my husband is often taken in different directions with the activities and the commitments that our kids have. And because we're living in this day and age where everything, or long ago when I was a child, you didn't do anything on a Sunday but go to church. Now things are happening on Sundays. So I get the busyness. Please don't ever take anything that I'm saying as a criticism. But I also remember that there was a time a couple of years ago when my kids were younger, and the nativity fell on the same day as a golf tournament. And I had to say, well, actually, in our family, the nativity is important. You're only going to be this age for so many years. And so the golf tournament went out the window. And some people kind of, when they found out that we'd said that, they smiled, but others got it, and that's okay. The other thing is teach your kids how to pray. I'm going to share something that happened also many years ago when my eldest, and forgive me for using the eldest so often, but we learn from our eldest, and then the rest just kind of roll from that. But my eldest really struggled when he started grade R. And there was a time when he would come home, he had so much just built up like anxiety and tension, and really grade R was a big jump for him. And I remember him coming home and he was upset. I think the next day he had swimming and he was so upset about it and whatever. And I remember this feeling of complete despondency. And I sat on the kitchen floor and I cried. I cried with him. He was 5. We sat there in tears. And then I did the only thing I knew what to do, and that's pray. And I prayed with him. And I felt a bit stupid at first, and I didn't know if this was going to get through to him or not. But I'll tell you that point in time, that moment taught my child how to pray, taught him what to rely on when he is in these, completely despondent moments. And since that example, because he shared afterwards a little thing when he was very little about, but I do pray through this. And I thought, oh my gosh, that actually did do something in his life. And so that, again, I've intentionally tried to promote that with the other 2 as well, after realizing the power of prayer. I mean, we know it, but we often think, oh, they're too small, they won't get it. It's never too young for them to be taught how to pray and who to rely on. Which brings me to the next point of teaching God's word. Diligently instruct your children in Scripture. Help them understand God's nature and explain the gospel. This is a parental obligation. Make time for Bible stories at bedtime. Talk about the wonder of God's creation, the beauty of the changes of spring, and how God has done all of this stuff. Practice thankfulness. Make God real to your kids in everyday practical ways. Teach them about gentleness and kindness. It's become a cool phrase at the moment, even worn on clothing, this whole concept of kind, be kind. But do they really know what kindness is? It's a fruit of the Spirit. It comes from God. Teach them about kindness in its purest form. Do your kids know that the Bible teaches us not to gossip, not to covet? Do your kids know what it means to tithe, to intentionally set money aside for the church? Do they know that generosity does not just mean giving your old food to the man at the robot? This is something that obviously Sheldon touched on last week, so I'm not going to speak too much about tithing, but do they understand what it means? As kids get older, you're split between assignments and homework and later bedtimes and tests. Saying prayers before bedtime can often be overlooked, but keep that sacred space in your home. It's so important. I would call it one of the most important building blocks of a strong Christian family. The next one is discipline with love. Implement, like Mel has said, implement clear, consistent boundaries and enforce logical consequences, viewing discipline as a loving act to guide your child's heart, not to torment them. Do I always discipline with love? Absolutely not. Many times I discipline in complete and utter anger. Is that the correct way? Probably not. Do I need to ask for forgiveness plenty times? Yes. The other day I had a conversation with my eldest about his phone, something that we managed to put off for long enough, and then we had to give in. And I told him that I didn't want the phone to be a thing between us. I explained my worries about his phone, the dangers, ability to get stuck on it so easily and addicted. And then I laid down some clear boundaries. For example, his phone was never to be in his room, could only be used in open areas like the lounge. It took a while to get into that habit, but eventually it became natural. He fails sometimes. So like Mel said, none of them are perfect. He knows I can always check it, like Mel said, at any time and without his permission because it belongs to us. And at the moment, we're living in harmony. But this is what I got from this conversation. He responds better to decent, firm conversation than shouting. And it's not always like that. Like Mel said, you need that tone of stop it, and that happens a lot in my house as well. So, but I realized, and I think I've known it for a long time, I realized that when I can have an honest, decent conversation with him, he responds to that. And it's quite the same with the other two. But on the flip side of that is that I realized that he responds better when my stress and busyness is at a lower level, and I can be completely present and put that time into it. So you're going to reap better rewards when you're looking at yourself inwardly as well. What is your mindset when you are flying off the handle? And trust me, that happens all the time. So I'm really, like I said, I need to speak to myself about this plenty times. Okay, and then cultivate a God-centered home. Talk about Jesus. Pray together, like I've said. Pray before dinner. Align your family with the biblical worldview. We are living in an age where everything is acceptable. I'm not even going to give examples. We all know them. Make sure that what you tell your kids is acceptable. Make sure that what you tell your kids is acceptable and it aligns to God's standards and not the world's. Stand up for this. Encourage them to be bold amongst their peer groups at school and courageous and stick to their beliefs, which are cultivated within our homes. Have open conversations about the hard topics. Let you and your home be the place that your kids come to for the answers. And then showing unconditional love and forgiveness. Again, this should be something that naturally comes from us. But the practice of showing love and then forgiveness is also teaching your child. Like Mel said, no child just grows up and knows this stuff. teach them what forgiveness means and teach them how to say sorry decently. Because if one of my children come in and will have to apologize to me or one of the siblings, and it's like, sorry, that is unacceptable in my home. Make them look someone in the eye and apologize decently and make them realize that sorry is just a word, unless they realize that it actually is meaning I'm going to try and not do that same thing again. Pray consistently. Pray for your children and together as a family, recognizing that God builds the home and you cannot parent without him. I met my husband when we were 16 years old, so we've been part of each other's families for a very long time. And I've known his family, obviously, for many years, and there was something that they did that long before we were married, that I really appreciated, and that was before leaving for the day, they'd hold hands in the kitchen and pray together. It's something I always wanted to instill in my own family. So standing in that circle years ago, I thought, this is what I want when I have my own family. But in all honesty, this is a department which needs work in our home. We often have all the intention to get more of this time, but this is a perfect example of what I started speaking about, that when things are not practiced daily, they will be the first thing to disappear in a routine when busyness invades. Require obedience and responsibility, and I'm not going to go in too much with that because Mel did speak a bit about that, but train your children to obey their parents as this prepares them to submit to God. Teach them responsibility by giving them opportunities to own their actions. If you need to speak 5 times to your child to hopefully listen, they're not respecting you and something has to change. Like Mel said, expect obedience and don't settle for less. Seek wisdom and adaptability. Seek wisdom from God's word and be willing to adapt your rules and methods to conform to biblical principles. Always looking to God for wisdom. If you don't know the answer, it helps so much, and Mel did touch on this as well, but to have the support of like-minded people, to have those friends around you. I always tell my friends with older kids, for example, Mel, that one day I'm going to come knocking on her door and say, what did you do? How did you handle this? I've learned so much from her and Sheldon. A couple of years ago, we had this conversation around a dinner table about the phone, and I can't believe I'm in this stage now. I also can't believe how so much has changed in that short space. That I really, really appreciate just having like-minded people to bounce things off, to go to when you don't know the answers. Bible study is an amazing example of that, and so are prayer groups. Lastly, we are parenting in the age of the phone, like Mel said. It's probably the greatest advantage and disadvantage of our lives. We'll need to navigate limits and boundaries on this thing that's capable of ruining innocence, causing friction, and destroying relationships. Be careful, little eyes, what you see. That song that we learned at Sunday school is always something that comes to mind when I think of the phone. I want to encourage you not to succumb to the peer pressure of handing out a phone to your 10-year-old because most of the class has one. I remember having, like I said, this conversation with Mel and Sheldon a while ago, and now at this stage, just before we gave our eldest a phone, there were most of the things we spoke about there are things that we've instilled now going forward with him. Do not let yourself be swayed by the world. In this age, it's important for us to stand up for what is biblically correct and to be the difference which the world needs. God gave you kids to protect. Be their protector. Lastly, go with your gut. Stand by what makes you feel right. There are going to be parties that sometimes you have that nagging worry and you can't put your finger on it as to why. Say no. It's okay to do what you feel is right for your family and your principles. You won't always be right, but if you are walking closely with God, your best is good enough. Pray about all things continuously. And because I so often think through worship songs, there was a release this past week about a couple that has just released an album, and I really, really enjoy them. They're from Bethel, and the song that I was listening to in the car while I had pondered a lot of these things, and the song that played is called Feet of Jesus. And I just want to end by saying, come back to the feet of Jesus. You'll get all your answers there, not from me or Mel or anyone around here, you'll get your answers from him. The lyric or the line in the song goes like this: whatever you're looking for, you'll find it at the feet of Jesus. Thank you.